The Milwaukee Bucks did not have it in Toronto tonight. Was that from tired legs on the second night of a back-to-back? Or or are we starting to see some cracks and some flaws in this team? We'll discuss on today's episode of Locked On Bucks.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What it do, y'all? Welcome to Locked On Bucks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Camille Davis, an NBA analyst with the Locked On Network and the co-host of the Technical File podcast, running solo today. But regardless if I'm by myself or I got Frank or I got Justin or we got guests, we appreciate you for tuning in and making Locked On Bucks your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast as well as on YouTube. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your first bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. So the Milwaukee Bucks had an emotional win last night in Indiana, right? It's the Miles Turner return to the city after the offseason that they had where, oops, surprise, he's a Milwaukee Buck after being a Pacer for 10 years. Oops, my bad. Y'all didn't pay him enough. So here's in Milwaukee now. Oop, there goes the wave and stretch for Dame. Like a lot of things happen, right? And we know the background between the Bucks and the Pacers. So that was an emotional homecoming for Miles Turner and a game that the Bucks really wanted to win for their guy, for their new teammate. And then they head to Toronto from Indy. And according to the broadcast, they didn't get in until like 1:30, 2 a.m., somewhere in that time. And then tonight, on that second night of a back-to-back, they suffer the biggest loss so far of the young season against the Toronto Raptors, going down and losing this game by 28 points. Final score in Toronto was 128-100 Raptors. The season series between the two teams are now tied 1-1. But this is one of those games where I look at this loss and I'm like, can it be explained as this being a tired Bucks team on the second night of a back-to-back? Or is this a product of the Raptors taking advantage of something that they're seeing in the Bucks roster that can be exposed as flaws? And let me start here by making my position very clear. I think it's mostly second night of a back-to-back, right? Both teams started the game off knocking down their first few baskets. But then the Bucks cooled off while the Raptors didn't. The Bucks ended up going 3-9 from 3 in the first quarter, while the Raptors went 9 of 15. The Raptors put up 15 threes in the first quarter alone. Also in that first quarter, the Raptors had a sizable fast break advantage, 13-5. And the Bucks entered that second quarter down 10, and it just continued to get worse throughout the game. The Raptors actually finished the game with a 27-11 fast break advantage, and they made 6 more threes than the Bucks did in this game. Both the Bucks and the Raptors shot 38 threes in this game. But as mentioned, the Raptors knocked down 6 more of them, going 17 of 38 from the field from 3, while the Bucks were 11 of 38, which is good for 29% if you want to round up. That was very, very easily the worst three-point shooting performance of the season for the Bucks. Again, a young season, but something to note. Oh, and let's not also forget to mention the fact that the Bucks turned the ball over 15 times in this game, and that led to 21 Raptors points. Meanwhile, the Raptors turned the ball over 10 times themselves. 8 points came off of that for their turnovers for the Bucks. So you could see it, right? Even on defense, which hasn't been good enough over the last few games, but you can see the rotations were slow, a little bit slower at the point of attack. And with all the threes that they were missing too, a lot of them were good looks for the most part. They just weren't falling. The defense, like I mentioned, that is an area that needs to improve for the Bucks going forward. But on nights like this, that can happen offensively where the three ball is not falling. I'm not mad at that part. Honestly, keep shooting the threes. I thought the Raptors did a pretty good job of trying to run the Bucks off of the line too when they came to getting the threes up. But when the Bucks were able to put the threes up, again, for the most part, they were good looks. Like coming into this game tonight against the Raptors, the Bucks were second in the NBA when it came to three-point field goal percentage. They were knocking threes down at a 41% clip if you round it up, otherwise 40.9, right? The Raptors were 7th coming into this game in their 3-point field goal percentage. They've knocked down threes at a 38.8% clip. So you got to respect the three ball from the Raptors. But the biggest difference between the Bucks and the Raptors so far this season has been volume. We know that the Bucks came into this season with the goal of trying to be a team that was top and getting threes up. Currently, the Bucks are 12th when it comes to three-point volume. They're shooting about 39.4 a game. While coming into this game, the Raptors were 24th. 24th. The Raptors generally only get up about 32 three-point attempts per game, but again, both teams shot 38 tonight. So you saw the Bucks a little under, and you saw the Raptors over on the amount of threes shot in this game. Like the three-point variance is a part of it, but again, the defense, they didn't give enough resistance to the Raptors in this game. And I thought that was the biggest problem between the offense and the defense for the Bucks in this one. But after the game, Doc Rivers was asked his opinion on the Bucks and their physicality and how they stood up to what the Raptors were throwing at them.
It felt like a pretty physical game.
Yeah, we did from their end. We just didn't have it tonight. You can see it early. Thought we could play through it. Never did. We were late on everything. I thought their energy, their quickness, their physicality took us out of the game. So give them credit. I thought they were very well prepared.
I agree. You got to give the Raptors credit too for how they played. Now the Raptors got a day to rest prior to the game against the Bucks. They looked like the team with fresher legs in this game against the Bucks, and they look like the more physical team against the Bucks in this game. Which the whistle that Giannis has been getting, there was a key part in the second quarter of this game where I thought that either Doc or Giannis was going to completely lose it when it came to how he was being officiated. And I think in large part too, because of how the whistle was going on the other end at times too. But I want to give that point a lot more attention in the next segment. One last thing I'll say about tonight's game against the Raptors with the Bucks having tired legs. That's going to happen. But as we'll talk about later in the show as well, the Bucks are getting ready to gear up for a stretch that's really going to test their conditioning and their endurance here. They have a lot of games coming up over the next 9 games. And as mentioned, that's something I want to break down a little bit further on in the show. And coming up after this, me and Frank touched a little bit on some lineup things that stood up to us yesterday on the show about the way that Giannis and Miles Turner were staggered. And my question is, are the Bucks playing with fire with some of these all bench lineups? I want to dive into that. Plus, as mentioned, the Giannis fouling situation. Is Giannis getting a good enough whistle? We're going to talk about that and more right after this. But first, let's talk to you about our friends from FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there is no better place to get in on the action than with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So even if you miss the start of the game, or you just want to ride the hot hand as you see how things are unfolding, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into same game parlays for an even bigger shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every single game exciting, especially when your team is making a late push. Thought the Bucks were going to have a late push in this game? Wasn't the case. But hey, if you saw it and felt something, you could have threw something at that. So right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Also, let's take a second here and just be real with one another, right? Because making excuses doesn't solve anything. We've all heard them before. It's just stress. I'm tired. It happens to everyone sometimes. But when it comes to performance, sometimes your body just needs a little extra support. And that's where Rugiet comes in. Rugiet.com offers fast-acting doctor-prescribed treatments for ED, designed to help you stop making excuses and start making some moves. Rugiet makes it easy to get started. You just connect with a board-certified doctor 100% online. No awkward waiting rooms, no in-person appointments. And if prescribed, your treatment ships discreetly straight to your door. The process is fast, it's simple, and it's private, and it's all handled by real doctors. Visit Rugiet.com. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnNBA to get 15% off your first order. That's Rugiet.com/LockedOnNBA. And don't forget to use our code LockedOnNBA so they know that we sent you. Rugiet, stop making excuses and start making moves. All right, y'all. Let me say this first and foremost. Time is super valuable. So I appreciate every single time you tune in to Locked On Bucks, making it your first listen of the day. Special shout out to all the everydayers who tune in Monday through Friday, the everydayers who see us, me and Justin out on the streets, and make sure to say, hey, what's up? Show some love. Always appreciate that. So just wanted to make that very, very clear to y'all as we get ready to dive in to the Giannis fouling question. I want to start there before diving into some lineup data because the Giannis whistle after the Pacers game, you heard a incensed Doc Rivers talking about Giannis being fouled and things not being called on him. He was a bit more measured tonight after the Raptors game, but he still called out the fact that Giannis is not getting the whistle that he deserves based on what's happening on the court.
No. You mean there's a few times he got fouled and they didn't call it. There's nothing you can do about it. Giannis is not going to change. He's going to keep playing the same way. Plays. The one thing with Giannis, and that's why he's such a treasure, he doesn't complain very often. So I always tell officials, like, if that guy's complaining, you're probably doing something wrong. Because he plays through hits, contacts all the time, gets hit all the time, rarely says anything. But when you see that he's frustrated, that means it's probably happening more. But that's just part of the game, and he's just going to keep playing. But give him credit, right? Really, I thought, we played last night. They didn't. They were sitting here waiting for us. But more importantly, they just played the right way the entire game. So I actually think, when you watch their improvement from this year to last year, they're doing a great job over there. Coach has really got those guys buying in, and so give them a lot of credit.
Again, credit to the Raptors for sure. They play a physical brand of basketball, and they don't seem to get whistled at the same rate as the Bucks when it comes to that. I mentioned there was a part where I thought that Doc or Giannis was going to crash out in this game. During the second quarter, right, there was a sequence where I was watching it and I was like, it's crazy that they're going to call this reach foul on Giannis after he was getting abused under the rim. Eventually, Scotty Barnes did get the ball clean, but prior to him getting the ball clean, Giannis was getting swiped across the arm. It was just a lot of contact. And after the turnover and they're heading the other way, Giannis kind of just gently reaches in, right? He reached for sure. I'm not saying he didn't reach, but it wasn't a very physical move. It didn't really alter anything that you were seeing with the ball handler, and the ref called the whistle. And the thing that irritated me the most, because I'm not somebody who watches games and like, oh, the refs lost the Bucks the game, or the refs lost the Packers the game. And speaking of the Packers, shout out to my co-host on Technical Foul, Tim, because he put together the analogy between Giannis and Micah Parsons, saying neither one of them are getting the calls that they should be getting. Parsons getting held all the time. Giannis is getting fouled a lot. And like I just mentioned, that particular play, if you're not going to call it when Giannis is getting abused under the rim, don't call it the other way when it's a very ticky-tack reach-in foul. Like, if the refs have decided, hey, we just gonna let stuff go, let it go both ways then. Like, call it the same way you call it on one end that you do on the other end. And that's always my biggest gripe when it comes to officiating. Call it the same way on both sides. And you can look at this game against the Raptors and be like, well, hey, the Bucks ended with 21 free throw attempts. The Raptors ended with 29 free throw attempts. Not that big of a difference. And hey, in this game, sure. But we have seen so far this season that Giannis just isn't getting the whistle that feels deserved, especially with him being a superstar. Like, he just doesn't seem to have a good whistle. Only 6 free throw attempts for Giannis in this game. Like, Mark Sears played 5 minutes in garbage time and he shot 6 free throws during that time. Like, come on, man. Like something about that ain't all the way right. But really quick too, wanted to touch on the lineups here. And the question that I have, and I'm going to kind of save this a little bit until I can talk with Justin and or Frank about this throughout the week, since, the Bucks don't play again until Friday. So there's some time to really dig into things here. But the question that popped into my mind while watching the game was, do we currently have enough data to say that all bench lineups for the Bucks are a problem? Because ironically enough, the starting lineup has been hovering around an even net rating, right? And the starting lineup post Kevin Porter Jr. injury with Rollins, AJ Green, Gary Trent Jr., Giannis, and Miles Turner, right? And why I'm asking this question is that when the fourth quarter started, the door felt like it was a little bit open, right? Now, the Bucks had a 25-point deficit at that point, which is a big deficit. But one thing we know about the NBA, especially now with the prevalence of the three ball, no lead is really safe. And to start off the fourth, it was Cole Anthony, Ryan Rollins, Taurean Prince, Kyle Kuzma, and Bobby Portis. That Raptors offense was ice cold. Like, the Bucks were able to get some stops. They were stacking some stops here to start the fourth quarter. But then you call timeout with 8 minutes and 32 seconds left in the fourth quarter, and only 3 points have been scored in that quarter between both teams. Between both teams, the Bucks scored 2 points. The Raptors scored 1 point in almost 4 minutes of play. The door was open for the Bucks to kind of stage that comeback, for at the very least for that bench unit to come in and cut that deficit down to 15, somewhere in there. Hey, if you can get to 15 points, cut into that. Let's see what the starters can do when they get back in the game. But because, again, the offense for the Bucks stalled while the Raptors offense stalled, the starters didn't even check back in the fourth quarter, which, with the way the game was going, I'm not really that mad at it. Like, it was the second night of a back-to-back, and the Bucks have a crazy schedule of games coming up that we will talk about after this. But it was just tough offensively for this group here too, for the bench, right? It's tough when Taurean Prince goes 0 of 5 from the field. All 3-point attempts, most of them, I would say at least 4. I was like, great shot, TP. Just didn't fall for him. Bobby Portis was 1 of 8 from the field in this game, including going 0 for 5 from 3. Like, Bobby Portis, the offense hasn't been super consistent for him so far this season, but it's really hard when Taurean Prince and Bobby Portis combine to go 0 for 10 from threes in the game when they are part of like the offensive firepower that's really holding up your bench unit. So that's just something I want to throw out there with the question too, because like I mentioned, if you really quick look through some of the lineup data, and I want to have a larger conversation about this, but that Rollins, AJ Green, Gary Trent Jr., Giannis, Miles Turner starting lineup has played the most possessions together so far. Duh. They've been starting, right? On cleaning the glass, which, as you know, takes out garbage time, the net differential for that 5-man group is a negative 1.9. Like, it's hovering around just being a net neutral. And then you look at a lineup like Cole Anthony, Gary Trent Jr., Taurean Prince, Giannis, and Miles Turner, 33 possessions. Very, very small sample size, but a plus 30. You look at an all-bench lineup. Well, kind of all-bench because Ryan Rollins is included in here. Ryan Rollins with Coffey, Prince, Kuzma, and Portis. 29 possessions, a negative 47.3 net rating. Like, there are some things with the lineups that are just really interesting to me about this team, but I want your opinion, you guys listening to this right now. Let us know in the comments. I'm so used to saying us. Let me know in the comments. No, you know what? It is still us because we are a team no matter what. We are a team. Let us know in the comments if you think that some of the lineups are a little bit on the struggle bus, if you don't like some of the rotations for the team, because one thing that Frank and I talked about on yesterday's show was, hey, maybe the Bucks should look to stagger Miles and Giannis just a little bit more to make sure they have that guaranteed rim protection on the floor. But we'll dive into that lineup data a little bit more in depth over the course of the week. What I want to talk to you guys about next is actually what's next for the Bucks, because they have a brutal stretch of games upcoming. And after seeing the performance tonight in Toronto on the second night of a back-to-back, beginning of the season, conditioning questions, still getting your legs underneath you to a certain extent, this next stretch of games is going to be a big one. So let's talk a bit more about that after this. But first, let's talk about gusto, because we got to be real. No one starts a business for the joy of calculating tax withholdings or managing payroll spreadsheets. And that's where Gusto comes in to take the stress out of payroll, the benefits, and HR, so you can focus solely on running your business and supporting your team. Gusto is an all-in-one remote-friendly payroll and HR platform that makes managing your team simple, transparent, and fast. So whether you're hiring, onboarding, or paying employees, Gusto helps you to do it all from one place without the hassle or the hidden fees. Unlimited payroll runs for one monthly price, which means no surprise charges at the end of the month. And knowing you can reach certified HR experts anytime gives you a real peace of mind. So try Gusto today at gusto.com/lockedonnba and get 3 months free when you run your first payroll. That is right. 3 months of free payroll at gusto.com/lockedonnba. One more time in case y'all didn't hear me in the back. That's gusto.com/lockedonnba. All right. As we wrap, like I mentioned, tonight appeared to be a challenge for the Bucks. Second night of back to back, but again, they also had the added emotional task of what happened the night before in Indy with the Miles Turner return, plus just the emotion of playing a rival, your biggest rival in the NBA right now. Bucks' biggest rival right now is the Pacers, which again, don't understand why the NBA's rivalry week has the Bucks playing the Thunder. I get y'all trying to make the NBA Cup a thing and you're trying to grow it and everything, but like, come on now. Bucks Pacers is right there. The energy between the two teams is palpable. I just don't understand it. But anyways, that is not the point that I'm trying to make right now. The point that I'm trying to make right now is that the Bucks have to gear up now to play 6 games in 9 days with 2 back-to-backs in that. Again, 6 games over 9 days with 2 back-to-backs sandwiched into those 6 games. Now, the Bucks do have 2 days off before they gear up for this next gauntlet of games. They are off Wednesday, they are off Thursday before they have their NBA Cup game on Friday against Chicago and Milwaukee. So what I also want you guys to put in the comments, let us know, tweet at me, blue sky at me. I don't know what the verbiage is on Blue Sky, what it's called, whatever it's called. Get at me through Blue Sky, Twitter, X, YouTube comments about what you think the Bucks record will be over their next 6 games, because here's what's ahead of them, right? I mentioned Friday night NBA Cup game versus Chicago and Milwaukee. And this is a Chicago team that's been real frisky, 6-1 now after having a big comeback win over Philly, I believe it was tonight. So they were down by like 24 points at one point in this game and found a way to come back. So Chicago, can't count them out. Scrappy, even without Kobe White, like they have just been playing some good team basketball right now. Josh Giddey has been looking pretty good for Chicago. So that's Friday, NBA Cup game against the Bulls. Sunday, first night of a back-to-back against Houston in Milwaukee. Now that Houston game should be a fun one because, I mean, one, it's a Western Conference team. You don't see them often. Houston is a team that has been seen and is seen as a contender in the West. Also, a really big team, just sizable. Like they can throw up some really big lineups. And the Bucks have thrown out some really small lineups. Like the starting lineup is just a little bit small, given the fact that you have Rollins and Green and Trent playing your 1, 2, and 3 in whatever order you want to put them in there. But meaning you got like a 6'4" guy trying to check wings. So that's going to be an interesting matchup. Then the second night of that back-to-back is in Dallas against the Mavericks. So Sunday, first night of the back-to-back against Houston in Milwaukee. Then you fly to Dallas to play them on Monday. Second of a back-to-back. That's a big ask, right? Also interesting, 2 Texas teams, and one's in Milwaukee and one's in Texas. Like, okay, NBA. Then you have Wednesday in Charlotte against the Hornets, who have been scrappy. And we know LaMelo, if he is healthy and playing the Bucks, he always seems to have himself a game, right? Then you have Friday back home in Milwaukee to play the Hornets again, this time in an NBA Cup game, which is also the first night of a back-to-back, because Saturday at home, you then welcome in the LA Lakers. So to run that back, here are the Bucks' next 6 games. Friday versus Chicago, NBA Cup game. Sunday versus Houston in Milwaukee. Monday in Dallas against the Mavericks. Wednesday in Charlotte against the Hornets. Friday in Milwaukee against the Hornets, NBA Cup game. Saturday at home against the Lakers. That is a tough stretch of games, to the point where if they can come out of that stretch 3-3, that 6-game stretch, that's the baseline for me. Like, hey, that's a good little trip here, because the travel, the back-to-backs, and the competition levels are going to be high for this Bucks team. They're going to be tested against the Houston in particular. Chicago should be a bit more fun than probably initially expected to start the season, or even in the off season, really, if like looking at that game. So it's going to be tough. I think the Bucks could manage to go 4-2. That's a win. If you finish that next 6-game slate of games over 500, I think that's a win for the Bucks. But it's going to be tough. And we saw tonight, looked like the legs just weren't there for him. So the conditioning, just going to have to get back into the swing of things. That NBA lifestyle of, hey, sometimes these games come quick, fast, and in a hurry. And that is going to be the case over the next few days for the Bucks. Some housekeeping here for the pod. The next future focus, looking ahead at some of the matchups, will be coming to you guys, I think, Thursday of this week. If not Thursday, it will be Friday. Talking to the folks over at Locked On Bulls, Locked On Rockets, and Locked On Mavs to get those 3 games previewed with those hosts before we actually get into it. And then, as I mentioned too, want to dig into some more lineup data this week prior to that next game against Chicago, and some other trends that we're starting to see from the Bucks a few games into the season, 8 games into the season right now, with the Bucks sitting at 5-3 in the East. So I want to thank you for making Locked On Bucks your first listen today. As a reminder, make sure that you check out the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast, because you know just as well as I know that Josh Lloyd is going to have y'all covered with all of the tips and the tricks and the stats and everything else that you need to be able to make the right moves in your league, and also just become an overall smarter NBA fan. So I truly do appreciate you for tuning in to Locked On Bucks. Normally, it's for Frank and for Justin and myself, but tonight it's just myself. So appreciate y'all, and catch you later.